MouseNJoypad.com bring you another original. It's fucking great.
Beatbuddy Tale of the Guardians has been around for a while now. Threx, the game's developer, released the game back in 2013. Now a full 2 years later, the Xbox One marketplace has been graced with its presence. But what exactly is Beatbuddy? Beatbuddy Tale of the Guardians is an action-adventure game that has a big focus on musical platforming gameplay. That sounds like a lot going on, but if truth be told, it's not that complicated. It's very close to your standard adventure platforming game, but the enemies and challenges that you face will be focused around a musical rhythm. You play as Beatbuddy, a little blue guy that looks like a dubstep-inspired Casper. Beatbuddy is an ethereal being who travels through the world, a kind of underwater soundtrack universe, to rescue his sisters Harmony and Melody, and to stop an evil bongo-playing prince. It's a unique setting for Tale of the Guardians, but the plot has been done to death. Luckily for Beatbuddy, the plot is the least important feature of the entire game. The first thing I noticed when booting up the game was the wonderful artwork that has been created for the title. It really is spectacular, especially considering the game's a couple of years old. The beautiful environments have been hand painted by the developers, and it's one of the standout features of Beatbuddy. Travelling through the world that's been created allows for plenty of time to admire the effort that has gone into the game in order to make it look as good as possible. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting, and the experience that I took away from the game came down to the minute-to-minute gameplay, as it always does. Beatbuddy Tale of the Guardians colours squarely within the lines, always conforming to the usual trends and never really opening itself up for more risky mechanics. I can't blame the developers for this, a safe bet is usually better than a Hail Mary, and it was the team's first foray into gaming. I feel that this is a case of credit where credit is due. The musical aspect of Beatbuddy Tale of the Guardians seems to be underutilised. The game would lead us to believe that it's an integral part of the gameplay, but it just wasn't the case for my time with Beatbuddy. There's a rhythm to the gameplay that's undeniable, but if the music were ever to be removed, or when I used an ability unlocked later in the game that dulls the sound, I never missed it. All of the enemies in the game will have some kind of percussion or instrument associated with them. It can add a nice layer to the audio, especially in certain puzzles or scripted sections where multiple enemy types are on screen at once and they come together to make some pretty funky tunes. Enemy types are varied, although there's not much in the way of combat in Beatbuddy. There are moments where you unlock new abilities and then have to fight off a horde of enemies, but these moments are few and far between. Beatbuddy instead makes you focus on problem and puzzle solving. Most of the puzzles boil down to rotating bounce pads in order to catapult yourself into rubble blockades to break them open. There are puzzles that will require you to dodge enemies while travelling a gauntlet or activating and deactivating switches to manipulate the environment. None of the puzzles are all that taxing, but they aren't necessarily a breeze. So Threx have managed to get them somewhere in the Goldilocks zone. On your adventure you'll meet characters that will help you along the way. Your trusty friend Clef will help direct you along your path and will fix your ride. A strange rock, potato, submarine type thing. It really is the only way I can describe it. Clef acts as the game's primary comic relief. And this is another point where Beatbuddy is on point, the writing. It's funny, whimsical and has a childlike quality to it that I found endearing. From finding notes from other characters in the universe asking for their friends to cover for them as they skip work, Clef's constant reassurance that everything is fine when parts fall off your vehicle. There's a light-heartedness that I for one found charming. The vehicle's a great addition to help shake up the gameplay and keep it from getting too repetitive. You spend most of your time swimming around as Beatbuddy, performing actions to solve puzzles and defeating enemies. Once you've done what you need to do, usually unlocking a big door, you get into the vehicle and get on your way. Beatbuddy has a great learning curve, and new abilities and tactics are introduced at a nice pace that gave me plenty of time to get accustomed to the new features before moving on to the next. And the same can be said with the vehicle. To begin with, it was just a mode of transport, bobbing along in time with the music. But as you progress and unlock weapons, it becomes a fearsome machine. In certain puzzles, I was expected to activate points which rotate the world by 90 degrees. It was disorientating at first, but I got the hang of it soon enough. Beatbuddy does have some performance issues. I experienced a lot of frame rate problems and jumpiness when I was playing. It's not usually too much of an issue, however when I had to time my movements or attacks to the beat of the music, it did cause me a few unjust deaths. It was a fairly minor issue, but it was one that happened throughout the game. One of the biggest problems for Beatbuddy is the oversaturation of the indie market on the Xbox One. There's no shortage of action and platforming games, and sadly there's nothing to distinguish Beatbuddy from the crowd. The musical element seems like a gimmick, and it isn't a defining feature of the game. I enjoyed Beatbuddy for what it was, a fun game that lets you know exactly where you stand. It's a game that lost a lot of its appeal through repetitive gameplay by the end, and one that sadly doesn't push any boundaries. But it's a fun title all the same. Beatbuddy Tale of the Guardians is, at its heart, a fun game. Great writing adds a personality to the game that the musical element sadly fails to deliver on. The gameplay is mainly puzzle based and it's entertaining, but it does get slightly repetitive as the game goes on. A beautiful art style rounds off Beatbuddy nicely, and while there are some prettier games available, there are many more that pale in comparison. Beatbuddy is a fun puzzle game at its core, and that's a good thing.